through summer and into fall?
Yeah, so I think I'll start with when our Board of Public Works actually awarded our construction contract to Ortiz Enterprises. They're our general contractor out there, and that was in June of 2018. So starting then our construction management team, which is my group, we had to work with the contractor to come up with basically a schedule that will adhere to all the regulatory agencies, all their rules and regulations and compliance matters. And we have 5 regulatory agencies that we have to deal with on this project. So you can imagine how many permits I had to look at and all the various lines of compliance that we had to deal with. But I just want to touch upon the major one, which is we're constrained by the rainy season. We're not allowed to work in the LA River, so we only technically have between April and October of every year to work inside the LA River. So, understanding the constraints of when we can work in the river kind of dictated how we went about scheduling our work. So the very first season, which we were allowed in, was basically the summer of 2019, which was April to October. And that was when you probably saw us pile driving for the center pier, and we were driving our piles about almost 60 feet deep into the LA River. And we have 5 piles. Each one, we have 4 that are 7 feet deep and 7 feet in diameter, and 1 that's 8 foot in diameter. So we did that the first season, and also we did some of the abutment work. But I guess a little bit prior to that, you would be thinking, well, maybe you're not doing anything in the winter. Well, that wasn't true. In the winter, what we were doing is a lot of back and forth between our team, Sid and Zoltan's team, and Arup, and also our steel fabricator in Coolidge, Arizona. They're called Stinger Bridge and Iron. And also working with them to come up with the shop drawings and how is this bridge going to be fabricated. So that was done. In last year, when we had the dry season again, April of 2020 through October and a little bit into November, you saw what was our actual erection of the superstructure, and that was all done and planned out to be done during that season. So that's kind of the general outline of, what we planned. And I think there was one question earlier, and I could answer that. I think they're worried about heavy equipment being in the LA River. Well, luckily for us, I think this area is a soft bottom and not a concrete channel bottom, which I've had other projects where if you have a concrete channel, then there's always, concern and risk that the heavy equipment would crack it. But luckily this is a soft bottom, but regardless, we were very careful. We have a lot of, basically regulations that we have to follow when we bring in these large equipment, and it's actually sitting on pads, that we built up. So we try not to impact the, natural channel. So I hope that answers some of the questions, and I'm happy to continue more later, Rex, as you continue, maybe some of the other slides that we have.
Yes, can we see some more of these slides?
We should probably go back to that last slide, though. The last one, I think.
Prior slide,
prior slide, because this is kind of an important one, I think. And maybe, why don't you, Sid, if you will, describe this and what some of our constraints were here.
So, when our first visit to the site, as you stand on either bank and you look across, it doesn't seem that difficult. You have to go from, as Rex mentioned, A to B. You have to span this. But there are things you don't see, and I've thought about it, and to me, it always feels like in a heist movie, you're standing and you see the thing that you have to get, but then there are all these invisible alarm lasers, and you have to sort of find your way through them without hitting any of them and triggering an alarm. And so what you see here is there is the embankment, that's the angled slope of the river. And that is designed to withstand a 100-year flood. Now, however, what you have to make sure is that there is an additional 2-foot 9-inch dimension that you see, which is the blue line above the red line, as additional sort of redundancy to whatever that capacity of the channel is. So that's the first thing, that your structure cannot go below that line. Then on the right-hand side, you see we have these high voltage power lines. And from the actual lines, you need a 30-foot clearance. So those two circles. So again, either in the finished product or during construction, any equipment cannot breach that radius for safety. And then finally, you see just below that, a little red square that's titled the NTA Service Road. On the north embankment, on Taylor Yard side, there's a service road right at the top of the embankment. And we had to make sure that our bridge had to sort of clear that or not impede that in any manner. So through all this, the structure of the bridge and the deck itself, the bridge deck, it was like threading a needle through all these different things. So that's what this is showing us, this drawing is showing here. Can we go to the next? And so here you can see, as Zoltan mentioned, this is the sort of the pure box truss, perfectly horizontal. And this is at that blue line. Now what this means though is both on the bikeway side, we have to now ramp up to clear that structure. And then on the maintenance yard side too, where the bridge truss lands on that maintenance yard level, the maintenance yard had to sort of ramp up and sort of go through those two structural members. Next. And then finally, this is the actual path itself that bridges that 10-foot elevation difference on either side. And this sort of forms that sort of counterpoint to the perfectly horizontal line. Next. And so that's our bridge. And we had done this, you still see those purple line that's the previously, the reclaimed water pipes that we had to support under the bridge to get that fund from DWP. And while it's not there right now, the bridge is still designed to carry that load, and the embankments on each end have the capacity for any future reclaimed lines to be connected to the bridge. Next. Zoltan, do you want to talk about the single span, two span?
I'll give it a shot. So, and I'll try to recall, but in the end, after we submitted our initial design to the city, to the Bureau of Engineering, there was a lot of discussion about, yes, we understand that the single span can work. Yes, we can, yes, that's possible, but there was this discussion about redundancy in the structure and the concern that the bridge might be a little too live. In other words, the deflections would be more than what some might be comfortable with, and so.
You mean it would bounce up and down, Zoltan?
Well, it would bounce is a rough word. It would you might feel it if you're in the middle, and if there was some load on it, it wouldn't bounce up and down by you walking across. I mean, you're not heavy enough, obviously. But if something heavier happened or a bunch of people were walking on it, perhaps it might create some vibration.
No galloping Gertie.
Yeah, so the concern was there, and then the only way to really solve it became clear that we had to put a center support, and there were kind of benefits to that center support, even though in the very beginning we were disappointed by it, but after it came into necessity, we really saw it as an opportunity. And what it did do, of course, is by putting in a center span, obviously your your structure now can become even lighter. So that